Every time I'm going to Palladium, I drive by that big bear and I salute him. I don't know what else. I don't know what else I could do. The band tags them. The studio tags them. We're here to help. I want to
Yes.
spread the. I want to spread the message, man.
Time record.
Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. This is another episode of the Scoped Exposure podcast. I feel very fortunate to be starting this day of mine with a killer interview. I feel like is in the works. We are very fortunate to have Will Putney, the man, the myth, the legend himself, on the show today. Thank you so much for joining me today, Will.
Thank you for having me. Much appreciated. Happy to be here.
Absolutely. As like, we're into season 2 now of the podcast, and with every season I always try to think of the guests that I would like to inquire with and reach out to. And I think you've always honestly been on my list of potential guests, as you seem to be one of the most active heavy music podcast people or guests that I've seen. You've done your tour around and got reached out to have you on the show. So I feel like, the table switched a little bit and here we are. So I'm very excited to be chatting about, the recording stuff you're doing, the bands that you're a part of, and kind of everything in between.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I appreciate you being interested in chatting. But
I'm also recognizing I think we might be using the same podcasting microphone.
I have this is the Procaster, I believe, from Rode. Look at that.
That's what I got. So
there it is.
Yeah. Very, I don't know why this story is suddenly coming to my mind. But it, for some reason, so in addition to this podcast, I also film bands. So back in 2018, the Acacia Strain came through and I was standing, on one side of the stage filming them, and it's like a very kind of tight stage. And I looked down and I realized like maybe halfway through their hour-long set, me and the guitar player were wearing the exact same camo pants. And just like they were like tuning, and I tapped him on the shoulder and I like flexed the shorts, and he was like, "Yo, let's go." So I don't know why that story just popped into my mind, but I felt like that was appropriate to share based off the matching mic scenario that's happening.
Yeah,
right now.
I mean, I bet that happens about 100 times at every Casey Strain show, but that's cool though. Yeah. I thank you to Rode for this very cool mic, because I didn't do any podcasts, so I didn't have a good podcast mic, and then I had to do a bunch, and they hooked one up for me, and everyone seems to like it. So if you're a podcaster, there it is.
Yeah. And I think the Shure SM7 Beavs are like, you see that time and time again. So I always take notice when it's like something a little bit non-traditional that does the same job, if not better.
For sure.
Yeah. So, Will, before we get into any more music chats, we got to check a bev. That's kind of like a tradition here on the show. So, it's appropriate for the guests to go first. So, tell me what you're going to be sipping on as we're discussing all the music stuff.
So, I'm a big seltzer guy because I quit drinking, but I like the bubbles. So, I was a polar guy. I still am a polar guy, but then I found these things called Spindrift, which is seltzer with the flavoring of real fruit, and this half and half tea lemon one is just godlike. So
I'm very, very happy that you're checking a Spindrift. I have to shout out my friend Matt. He put me onto that because I'm a big bev head, I would say, and Spindrift isn't something that we have in Canada. So as soon as I was introduced to like sparkling water mixed with the juice, I was like, my world just opened up. So
I'm all in on it. What do we got? 5 calories, no sugar. Tastes great.
What flavor is that?
That's the half and half. So it's tea and lemon.
Oh, okay. Got you.
Very good.
Yeah. I've had I think when I was down for a festival in last summer, I had the opportunity to like try, I think, the raspberry lime, the black berry and currants.
Yeah,
that one
good.
was really, really good. And I think one more. I remember I had one in my backpack, and I was like taking my flight home back to Canada, and I realized like, oh, I have to down this before security, and I just just guzzled it. But it makes me very happy that you're checking something, very, very sick.
Yeah, it's a high quality seltzer. I recommend it.
Was that Siri on your end?
I think so. I hit the button. I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. I was like, was that me? I'm not sure. So Will, I'm not sure how familiar with the show you are, but we actually have a couple beverage sponsors ourselves, and so I'm going to be checking one of those. So I don't know if you're into chai or any of that kind of stuff. So this is a chai concentrate from our friends at Say When. So it's essentially a 1-to-1 mix that you can do with like a milk or a milk alternative. So I'm doing the dirty chai. So it's like a little bit more packed with caffeine because you got like a little bit more coffee. So all you got to do is just half of that. There's a lot. This always gives me anxiety when I'm doing these because I'm trying to showcase it well for the sponsor, but also like lots of liquids.
Yeah.
Haven't had I think I've had maybe 1 or 2 spills, but like nothing like mid podcast that I haven't been able to do or fix. So yeah, I just did some oat milk there, and then boom, we got a little dirty chai, as I like, an iced dirty chai. I'm ready to go.
I like it. I might have to try that. Thank you for the recommendation.
Absolutely. I'm actually, this is a little bit of self-narration here, but I think I'm trying to get it set up a little bit more. So instead of people just having a coupon code, I'm going to try and just get this sent to anybody who's, coming on the podcast that I check it. So I will work behind the scenes to get you some chai.
I love it. I'm a chai guy. So
chai guy. I love that.
I would enjoy that. So thank you,
All
chai
right.
people.
Well, but thank you so much for coming on. Cheers to you. I'm very excited to do this podcast.
Yeah, let's do it.
Boom. So Will, any new guest here that I have on the show, I always like to, get a little bit of context about how they got into hardcore and metal and all that kind of stuff. And like I said at the top of it, like I know you've done many, many a podcast, and I'm sure there's a lot of fans who are listening right now who, they've probably heard the same old song and dance multiple times. So as simple or as complex as you want to break it down, tell me about like your origin of how you got into heavy music, and we'll kind of move on to some of the more current stuff that's happening with you.
Sure. I grew up in a house that my parents listened to the softest music possible. Like I never really was exposed to much classic rock or anything that like your cool parents would listen to. It was a lot of Elton John and Rod Stewart and Neil Diamond, and I grew to just despise soft music. I think it was just brainwashed into me as a kid. So right from an early age, I always gravitated towards more extreme stuff because it was just interesting to me. Like I probably in like 4th grade, I found West Coast like hip hop and Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg records, and that was the craziest thing I had heard at that time. And I had a good run of that. And then I was sort of a product of MTV at the time. So when all the grunge stuff and things exploded, I found Nirvana and Soundgarden and all like that era of bands. And that was kind of my thing for a while. And then I kind of just ran into, like anybody would, I just crossed paths with friends who were into metal and found the Big Four, Metallica and Slayer records, early on. That sort of was pretty influential. Probably in the beginning of high school, I got a job in a supermarket, and a lot of the kids that worked there were in like the hardcore scene in New Jersey. And there were venues. There were a lot of venues really close to my house. So I kind of opened the doors to this whole world of stuff that was going on that I didn't even know existed. To me, Metallica and Slayer was like, that was the most extreme thing. That was like what metal was. But then I found like all of these Jersey bands, and at the time this would have been like 1999 or something. So at the time it was just exploding around here with all this good music you had. And New Jersey was this hotbed where it was between like Philly and New York. So all these A markets, and like anytime bands would come to play weekends, they would always hit New Jersey. So we were spoiled. And I found like within that 2-year span there, I was exposed to so much music. Like I found, what I found, like Hatebreed and Vision of Disorder and All at War and Candiria, Dillinger Escape Plan, God Forbid, like Converge, all this stuff was always in New Jersey. Right. And then all of these shows with these mixed bills with all the subgenres and stuff, it was like the beginning of all of it. At least like for me, it was the beginning of all of it, and that really shaped my taste. And it's probably still my favorite era of music to this day. Obviously I'm nostalgic from it, but then I started I picked up a guitar. I started, trying to play in local bands. We had bands going, and it just all kind of snowballed from there. I never really saw music as a career or anything. It was always just a hobby and a passion thing. I spent all my free time on it and I loved it, but it was like, I was going to college for something completely different at that point in my life. And I never, I was taking music classes for fun, but not because I was trying to do anything professionally, really. To me, I just didn't see a way to do it. I wasn't like, I'm not particularly awesome at guitar or anything like that. I just didn't see it, Right. And then on a whim, a professor I knew Machine, the record producer. They actually shared like a building together. So down the hall from where I would take my little music elective classes and stuff was Machine's recording studio. And he knew that I liked Machine's records. Machine needed an intern. I was looking for something to do one summer. And we wound up hooking up. And like, that's like, I kind of, day one there was sort of like the first time I had ever really seen what a real studio was like, how records are made, what is a record producer, like all of that. So within a couple weeks, I was like, oh, this is kind of what I want to do now, and I wound up just staying there, trying to hustle and do my own records, working for him, learning from Machine, and then applying it to my own stuff. And it was just like years of that. And it all just kind of grew from that point, to where we are today. But that was the first time I ever was like, oh, I think I can do something. I can do this with my life now, Right. And I never felt that before. So I just jumped into it.
Yeah, no, I appreciate I feel like that was a very healthy amount of like the whole trajectory of like finding it, peeling back the onion layers and then getting into like more of some of those things. And I want to go deeper on like some of the, how you started to build out your career and some of those things. I think it's hilarious how you mentioned how there's like a grocery store and there's all these hardcore kids that are stocking the shelves and ringing people up. So it's like, I don't know if that was maybe a serendipitous thing of people working there because it was easy to take time off to go on tour and those kind of things, or it's just like, shout out to Kroger's hardcore or whatever that kind of shit works. But
yeah, this was like a ShopRite, and honestly, like half the kids that worked there either were in bands or were like at shows all the time. Like there was this little scene of like the guy in the grocery, in the frozen, and the guys who push the carts, and like the meat department. There was like a dude everywhere in the store who was like one way or another, like a part of the hardcore metal scene in Jersey. So then we'd go, there'd be a show and it'd be like, 30 of us from the supermarket are there. It's funny.
Yeah, because normally it's like, you spot the one or two kids at your high school that are wearing like the metal shirts, and you're like, I know what that is, when everyone else is wearing, the Abercrombie and Fitch and the jock stuff. And, not to say that you can't be in hardcore if you wore that, but it's just like a little bit more of like, oh, I understand you. Like I remember vividly, like when I was first getting into heavy music, and I would be on like a school trip in like Toronto or something, and I'd see someone across the street with like a Devil Wears Prada shirt, and I'm like, oh, we speak the same language, So I think it's just funny how just the grocery store itself was just a hotbed of like some of those things.
Yeah, and my high school, I was one of 5 or 6 kids that were probably into it. I mean, it was the pile. I mean, the amount of us were so small, and none of them liked me because. Like they got into like more extreme music a year or two before me. So I was like the poser kid.
Oh,
so
okay.
Like it never, like I wasn't friends with any of them at all, of the 5 of them or whatever. So
You experienced gatekeeping like very early on.
Oh, yeah, so right. And like this supermarket where I worked at, we're all kids that went to a different high school. I just happened to live by a town border thing or whatever. So all my friends were like at a different high school. So I was like just on my own at my high school. So when school got out, I would just go hang with them. But yeah, I was fully on my own through high school. I was just a weird kid with the Morbid Angel t-shirt that like I get yelled at for wearing. Like no one understood it. But right. It was a weird time, but growing pains for sure.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And I think the trajectory of like listening to the big four, like you said, and it's like I think before you discover the local scene and some of the smaller bands that are still writing as good as music and having crazy experiences, then you actually like see the gap of like the smaller bands and then these huge bands versus only thinking like, well, there's no way that I can like get to that level because these people are playing in amphitheaters and like stadiums and playing to thousands of people versus like, oh, I'm in a garage with like 100 people, if that, and people are going crazy and the music is just as good. And then now you like when you've been in hardcore, just like heavy music, as long as you or even someone like myself, like you kind of understand like how a band starts here, like Knock Loose, like back in the day, and then kind of like raises through the ranks, and now it's like there's a huge range of like being able to do things.
Yeah, I mean the difference being when I was a kid, it was like impossible to be like there were only so many bands that could break through onto like a higher scale because like the internet wasn't a thing. Like like you couldn't. What happened? The handful of bands that kind of made it out of New Jersey and stuff, they had to work so hard to do that because there was no like, you're just not aware of it. People 2 states over don't even know this band exists, Right. Nowadays you could put a song up online and everybody in the world could see it right away. And if it gets shared enough, like there was a way to spread music. There's a way to spread music today that just didn't exist back then. So It was like tape trading and like distro guys who would follow bands around on shows and like zines would come out. We used to look in like the thank you credits of records. Like when bands, like I remember we always talk about the Hatebreed Satisfaction thank you credit list.
Yes.
Like, and how that was so cool because we were able to find all these bands because Hatebreed was kind of like, at the time they were one of the like premier bands in that genre. They had exploded with that record and that was like the one that was like kind of on the map and they were doing worldwide touring and things. And then they put this like thank you list in their record that was so long and we were just read it and then go try to find those bands somehow,
Right.
And it helped like stuff like that. Like that's how you found bands, like all these weird techniques. And now it's like, oh, you just post it on Spotify. But yeah, now so like nowadays it's easier, but it's also harder because now anyone could be in a band. You can pull up your laptop and sit by yourself and make a song and put it online, and all of a sudden the whole world can hear your music. Like you just couldn't do that back then. So it was like, yeah, now it's like it's easier, but it's harder it's more competition.
Yeah. Different problems that I guess bands need to navigate. Yeah, because like even I'm having flashbacks to when we had Stu from Misery Signals and Comeback Kid on the show, and he was talking about when Misery Signals was first starting out, it would be like sending cassettes for like unreleased songs for him to learn while he was in Canada and then coming down to the States. So there's all these things where it's like, yeah, we should definitely not like check our privilege, but just recognize on how much technology has advanced and being very grateful and understanding when it's like, there's new problems to have, but there's also not guarantees on some of those things. Because that's something that I find, especially for new bands, is like they put all this work and effort and money and all this stuff into a song, and then they get peeved when it doesn't pop. And, it's like, well, there's 1,000 other bands who are doing the exact same strategy as you, and like there is an element of luck and the right timing to make it happen for sure.
Sure, I think there are a lot of kids today that aren't really aware of like how much it used to take to be a band that breaks and stuff. And I'd say not everybody, but I'd say most bands that are starting out today wouldn't cut it if you rewind the clock 20 years, like it would have just been too much work, you know.
Yes.
So I'm always aware when I see bands complaining about stuff. I was like, you have no idea how hard this could actually be for people.
Totally.
You know.
Yeah, I was listening to a podcast you did semi recently where you're just talking about like how, you know, now with again the age of technology and like being able to, you know, just fix it in post, where like a lot of bands didn't have that luxury, and so they would have to be in the room with each other like multiple times a week, and they just created this like this connection and magic when it came to like playing their music, where it was clearly translated through the recordings versus like, you know, stuff was moved around and all this kind of stuff. So yeah, I think you're totally right. Is like bands had different problems than maybe they do now, but you know, it's great to get an audience quick, but it's hard to reach the people that you want to at times, I think is kind of where we're at now.
Yeah, and you just had to be better. Like that's the other thing. All networking and that kind of bullshit aside, like I was talking to Ant from E-Town Concrete, who is like one of the earlier bands that I had found in New Jersey, maybe one of my first shows ever. And you know, he's gone to such great places with his career in the music industry and stuff. But we were talking about some of the early records because I mean that's the stuff I like cut my teeth on around here and stuff. And one of the albums, he's like, yeah, we did the whole thing in one take. Like they didn't have a setup to record like you do today. They literally just had to set up a bunch of mics, vocals included, and just do it live. And then I was like, so you did, and it took I forgot how long it took. You might have said like 2 days or 3 days. We did a whole album in like 1 or 2 days. That means that guy was screaming full day, like 12 hours a day. Like, I don't know. I don't even know if I know a singer that could do that now. Like a few of them, maybe, but like to be able to be like, do it again, do the whole thing again. And then 4 hours later, be like, all right, another whole song in one shot. And then, so then when you listen back to that stuff, you can really appreciate like, yeah, it's not perfect, but like, how would it be perfect? Like, it's impossible that it would be perfect. You know, now everything is like impossibly perfect. And obviously I do the same thing. Like I get hired to make a record that's as like flawless and cool as possible in certain ways. And bands just want that now too. But it's like, I mean, it blows my mind thinking about some of those records and how they were done. It's like, I barely know bands that could do that now. Like,
wow, that's wild.
Bands are so spoiled, so spoiled now.
Yeah. So let's use that as a little bit of a transition. So you were mentioning on how, you know, getting into the music stuff, like it wasn't in your mind that it's like, I want to do this as my career. It was like, this is purely a passion thing. Like making money or doing anything of that scale wasn't even on your radar. And then being able to see a full studio in the flesh, like kind of like, was that the initial spark? Like, I'm kind of just curious on the trajectory of like, getting into like, oh, I can actually do this. You know, and I have to cut my teeth and, you know, pay my dues and, you know, start small and then scale up from there. But I'm kind of curious on some of that because I think something that's really cool about heavy music now, I think because of how record labels are doing things, and I think the pandemic definitely helped the economy on some of those things as well. In the sense of buying records versus like touring, obviously being not on the cards. But I'm curious on discussing on how people can actually like make their living by doing different things within this heavy music world versus like it's purely about the art and some of those things. But to cut off my rambling, tell me about like, yeah, the origin and a turning point moment of like, oh, I could actually like make this my quote unquote 9 to 5. Obviously you probably work longer hours than that.
I do, but it's fine. I haven't, I don't know. I couldn't pinpoint an exact turning point, but I think once I realized what the job was, see, I had never been in like a huge band or like even a full-time touring band. The shows that I was playing were just like, I was always small scale. And I was like, I don't know. I'm not the greatest musician. So I was like, and I'm seeing these like world-class players and other people come in and I'm like, I don't know if I'm this guy. Like this might not be the role that I like. I very much think I have confidence as far as understanding music and
Mm,
what works for bands, why things connect. Like, and I feel like I always had an understanding of that. Like, and but I was just never able to ever really able to execute it myself. But working with a record producer like Machine and kind of then applying some stuff on my own, I realized like I kind of get to be a part of other bands and we make each other better.
mm,
And like I like the sum of all the parts is better than anything I would do on my own and anything that they would do on their own. So I'm like, this is awesome because I feel like I'm serving a purpose and making good music great. And it's like where it sits in my brain and how it keeps me like the spark kind of clicked when I realized like none of it feels like I'm doing a job, you know.
mm.
And when I no matter how many hours I would do it, especially back then when I was starting, like I would sleep at the studio, I'd wake up, work for Machine all day, and then when he left, I would just work on my stuff until I passed out and wake up and do it again. And I was doing that for a while. And I had an apartment and it, like a dog and a girlfriend and everything. And it's like, oh yeah, I forgot I have like other stuff. like like I have like life somewhere
Yeah.
else stuff. But I was like, it didn't even click to me that like uh it didn't feel like work ever at that time.
Mm.
And that's when I was like, man, if I can figure out a way to do this for like for a career, I'm gonna love it, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, once all that settled in, I was like, okay, I just need to bounce my normal life a little bit, and then this will be the thing I'm gonna do.
I think it's very cool that you mentioned like, you didn't come from like this huge band and then you use that attention and all that to use it as a springboard to another endeavor. It was like I'm playing in these cool bands, but I'm getting to work with larger like people I look up to, and then this is a potential way that I can work even more intimately and be a part of, that. And like you said, like people make, there's mutual benefit. You making the record, makes it great for the band, and then the band also, allows you to work through different processes. And that's what I feel kind of like is very similar with me with this podcast, is that like I play in a band. I don't think that we're the biggest and craziest band of all. I think we're a good band, but being able to do something that's outside of that gives value to other artists, where I get to talk with people like you. And we've had so many different, like, I think when we were setting up this podcast, like the person I was in contact with was like, I think this will be really good because I've interviewed so many people that you've produced records for. So it's been a really wild ride, but I really think that's important to be able to like find something that comes to you so easy and can be related to heavy music. And I think, doing it over years and years and years, like it, it just grows, and then it becomes something where, I fully think that in a number of years, like this podcast might sustain itself versus me just kind of doing it here in my office. So I think that there's like a lot of cool things to be taken there, where A, if you apply the hard work, but B, if you're doing something that you genuinely enjoy and it doesn't feel like work, it can become something truly meaningful for sure.
Sure. I mean, I'm super lucky that I figured it out early enough to get my life in line to do it. You know, like I do feel like I do talk to kids, and not even kids, like old, like kind of older guys now who ask me about recording or this and that, and they're like, "Yeah, I just wish I could do it, but I have this other job and stuff, and but I can only do this for fun, like part time. But I could, like you could tell that person really wanted to do this, and I'm like, I'm glad I figured this out when I was like 20,
Mm.
21, whatever it was, and not now in life, because I was like, I did like grab the opportunity when it came, and looking back on it now, I was like, man, I'm fortunate that it lined up in a time where I was like had the confidence to go for it.
So maybe to break that down a little bit, like how many years of like the quote unquote like building and the grind that it took for you to actually get it to a place where it's like, this can actually pay my bills, and this I can have a healthy balance of like not recording on certain times of the month or things like I'm really curious on how it, because I know that everybody's timeline is different of like being able to achieve, their goals or their dreams or whatever. But I'm kind of curious on like how much of that like sleeping at the studio and recording all day, and then the hamster wheel, if you will, took for you.
Yeah. It was a while for sure. I had another job that I would work I was a bartender that I would like fill in the gaps between when Machine needed me when I first
Sure.
started. So I was working crazy hours every week and then trying to do my stuff. And then it probably the initial records that I was making would take so long to make because I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I didn't have the available time like I probably needed to get it done because I had to work 2 jobs to just like live in New Jersey because New Jersey sucks. But it took me probably took me years, to be honest, like before it was like, I mean, a lot of years before it was comfortable for sure. But like, I mean, once I started doing the like label projects and those budgets started to become like kind in a way better, probably financially than like what Machine was paying me at the time and stuff. I went solo from him where it was like, cool, now I'm making my own records. He would still hire me if I had free time or if it was something cool to do. And I'd still work with him. But then like when I was fully independent, then it probably took just like within that year, it kind of went well. But it was like, it was years of like kind of taking what I can get, still working for Machine, still working another job, like trying to just grab it wherever I could, but yeah, it was hard. Definitely hard.
But to commend you on that, I think like good things, like hard work forever pays in the end. And I think it's like, again, it's not like a guaranteed that if you take the leap and do 5 years of something, a podcast, recording, whatever it is, a band, like it's not guaranteed, but like you'll never know unless you're actually doing that. And I think a lot of what I'm doing with this podcast and the different endeavors is like, I'm willing to invest the years. And I feel like a lot of people will start something for 6 months or a year and then they aren't happy with the results and they'll, hang it up. So I do think that it is, obviously I'm very aware of like people's different life situations and, like you were saying, it's a lot hard. It would be a lot harder to start in your 30s versus, the start of your 20s. So I'm sensitive to that, but I do think a lot of people just expect things to happen versus like trying to actually invest the time and be patient for it to happen.
Sure. I mean, I had no idea how long it would take, and I kind of had a shortcut because I at least worked at a studio that was pretty well known. It was like a good icebreaker for people to consider me for records,
Sure.
But even with that, it took so long, so people who give up right away, it's like, especially in this field, because it is such a niche thing and it's competitive in its own ways. And it like the caliber of your work is what gets you something like your next job. I mean, that's what will grow you as a record producer. The only way you get a record is if a band hears a record you've done, they think it sounds cool. That's what they want, or like they could see the quality and they want something like that,
Right.
So to get there, the trial and error and like the time investment to be good at a profession just takes time,
Right.
And I don't know if people aren't aware of that, or I definitely see younger kids, because you have the tools now to immediately just like open up a laptop, load a bunch of presets. It's like already kind of good sounding, so it's like, cool, I'm going to do this. It's like, all right, well, you didn't learn how things work or why they're cool. You're just kind of emulating what somebody else gave you. They struggle because they haven't like gone through the motions of it all,
Yes.
And there's a lot. It's an endless wealth of stuff that you learn when you're actually like applying yourself in any profession. It's like you see what works, you see what doesn't work, you see, not just how something works, but like how to use it in the right way, how to use it to make things cool. And it's impossible to teach. You just have to do it,
Yes. Yeah, I think that there's some things just based off like the actual process of working with musicians that I want to get to. But maybe a tail end question that I can ask based off this whole like the trajectory of how you started things and how it's blossomed. Like, do you think that there's one record or one project that really stands out of like this was like the catalyst to like the tidal wave of work that came and like all that work helped cement a lot of the the legacy that I have? But is there one project that was like, oh, this was the thing that just like just opened the floodgates?
Was there one? There's probably two for different reasons,
Okay.
I think I was working with the first label gig I ever got was I was going to record the Banners, this old Ferret Records band from New Jersey. I knew the guys, and right before we were set to record, the guitarist quit for the band. Oh. And at this time, this was like the first gig I got that was like on a label that I loved, and I didn't want this to fall apart. I didn't know if I was going to get another chance to do anything on that label anytime soon, because that was like the band from New Jersey. Everything else was probably too big where it didn't make sense for me at all,
So did he quit like the day before, a week before? Like what's the timeline?
Very close to the studio time, to the point where they were like, we can't make a record. Like we don't know what to do. We don't have songs. We don't have a guitar player now. And so I was like, well, come in, we'll do it. Like, let's try to write some stuff together, do it and stuff. So like I got in so hands-on, like at that point, more than anything I had ever done, where I'm like writing songs with them, and like we arranged and put the whole record together, and it came out and it was cool and people liked it. And I was like, okay, now I have like confidence that like, that was a pretty crazy thing to be thrown at me at that time in my life. I was not really prepared to do that, but like did it anyway, enjoyed doing it a lot. And then I was like, all right, now I feel like what else could happen? Like, this is like I kind of just saw the like craziest, worst way to walk into a record, So I was like, I could navigate pretty much anything. So I felt pretty good about it. And then the one after that, I think it might have been like maybe the next record, very close to that, was this band Reign Supreme from Philly. That was like, they're like the band that already had it going on around here and stuff, that actually took a chance on me, where it was like, they probably could have recorded with a lot of people. It was already on the radar in the hardcore world. Like they had like a demo that had hit and stuff, and a record deal with Death Wish, and like everything was there, where it was like, whoa, this is like cool, and the stuff I like, and like they have no business being here, but I got it somehow anyway. And that EP, that first EP we did, probably did more at the time, was like the first record where people were like, whoa, this is cool, who made this? Like, it helped. It definitely brought a lot of work in, and that was the first of probably many different increments of that over my life,
Right.
But I'll always think of that one as like, okay, that's when it got more serious,
Right. Yeah. And it's always funny because it's that thing where there are certain experiences where you're like, I wasn't ready for this, but then you can look back and be like, oh, like there were things that maybe indirectly prepared me to like jump into the saddle and like, pick up a guitar and start writing stuff. So, so I think that's really, really sick. Let's transition into some of the actual, like when you're actually working with these bands in the studio. And, something I heard that you said, I think it was on when you were doing the first Knock Loose record, and there was a little documentary, a little behind the scenes video that you made. You were mentioning on how you have a mantra or like a rule of like always just trying something at least once. And that has really stuck with me after I watched that, because that was a number of years ago. But like, I think before then, as a songwriter, I was always like, I would craft a song and I would be so like headstrong about like it needs to be this way, and like anything else just was like trying to muddy the waters. But that really opened up my mind to like, okay, even if someone is trying to loosely explain something at the jam spot or like in the studio, you'll never actually know what it sounds like until you actually do a take of it and you can listen back and then you can have that discussion. So when did you was that instilled with you when you were with Machine, or did that come through another means? I'm just curious on why that philosophy is so imperative in your work.
I think it's more from just like growing to know the personality of like how guys in bands can be.
Mhm.
Probably like if you know, I think it's a very common thing, especially with younger bands, to be extremely just precious and attached to their original idea that they wrote. It's called demoitis. Like where,
Yes.
yeah, it's like that's the only way they can hear it. They have a hard time imagining it another way. And it's kind of closed-minded in a way of thinking because it's like, all right, you hired me. We're here. The goal is to make the best record possible. I have an idea. I'm not demanding that we do the idea or somebody else in the band has the idea. So it's like, if you didn't think of it or you don't think it's going to be cool, fine. I get it, but let's just like try it and see if it is cool, you know?
Yeah.
And if it sucks, it sucks. Like, well, I'm not always, I'm definitely not always right, but it's like, if I'm trying to make the record better, I'm trying to make the song better. So like, I'm thinking hard and throwing things at you to try to help improve this. So like, let's try them, you know,
Yeah.
otherwise I'm not really interested in working with a band that doesn't want to be produced, you know? So it's like, if we're all here for a reason, let's do that thing, you know?
Mhm.
Um, and then, you know, obviously there are great bands that just don't need a producer. Like they write what they write. They have a certain style or there's an element to what they do that just like works and connects. And yeah, maybe I think a riff or two could be cooler or this song's a little weird or this could be trimmed down or whatever it is. But it's like at the end of the day, they're just you have to be pretty proven to be like that confident to me,
Sure.
you know? Like if Trent Reznor wants to write a record tomorrow, no one's gonna tell him like, yo, this verse kind of sucks, man. Like he's gonna do what he wants because he's earned the ability to do what he wants. And
Got you.
because he's an artist that's on a like that high level of musicality where it's like that's what you want. You just want his brain, you know.
Right.
But if you're 20 years old and I tell you your riff sucks, try another riff. Like just try. Like I'm not saying like hey, it's got to go forever, but it's like we're all just the best ideas should always win in scenarios like that, you know.
Mhm. Yeah.
Luckily, pretty much everybody I work with nowadays is on that page. And I think
Yeah.
the older as bands evolve and become more veteran bands and stuff,
Mhm.
when you have that like reflection of like what actually matters, like at the end of the day, it's like you just want the best song and the best record. Like the how of it is not nearly as important. Like
Right.
because when you hear a record and it sounds awesome, you're not counting whose original idea was what and stuff like that. You just
Right.
connect to it for whatever reason. It doesn't matter to anyone else but the one guy who's holding on to something, you know.
Yeah.
So I've always tried to make that point. It's
Yeah.
been pretty good with that lately. So
Yeah, no, yeah, I think that's a great point to be like, at the end of the record process, no one's like looking at like how many gold stars for all their ideas that they got counted. But I do like how you brought up too, like the the more that you work with different people, the more open that they become to being like, yo, like, well, what do you think about this part? And you're like, well, maybe we could try this. Like, so I do think that it is a maturity thing when it comes to bands where once you had that first producer experience, like, I like when I first heard that was kind of a seed that kind of got planted. And now it's like I'll just write something and send it to like a bunch of like people that I know have an ear for this kind of stuff, or I value their opinion, and I'm like, hey, what do you think about this? And I think that is such a healthy thing with any music that you're writing, is to be able to have feedback, and take that and then figure out what you want to do with it, because at the end of the day, like, you're not forcing the bands that you're in the studio with. But again, if the goal, I like you said that the best ideas should win in those scenarios.
yeah, I mean, it all depends what your goals are. Like, why are you writing music? Why are you in a band? Is it
Mhm.
purely 100% to express yourself creatively in only the way you deem the best way? Or are you trying to like reach more fans, grow this way, like like pull off a different style of thing? Like, you know, like the factors that come into like why a song would change. There's like a million reasons, but it's like if you're trying to do it for the long haul and you want the best result possible. There's like really no other way to approach songwriting than like, I just want the best song for whatever it is, you know?
Yeah. So, another question I had is, and I think that this is something I've been thinking about a little bit more because, you know, for this podcast, like Taylor Young, past guest of the show, so we got to chat about his process and, you know, some of those things. And then on my Works podcast, we recently had Kurt Ballou from Converge and God City on. So something that I heard in both of those, and I'm curious on your thoughts about, is just like approaching recording with the different musicians from a more like human to human level versus just like, oh, you're the crazy lead guitar player, how are you not like landing these things? So like, I'm curious on like how, as you've done more projects and worked with different artists, like what have you learned when it comes to like how you have to pivot and maybe adapt to recording, like your process of leading in those scenarios with different people versus like doing the same recording process with every musician, because like clearly that doesn't work. But I'm curious on your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, understanding like the dynamic of the band and the personalities that are in the studio is an important part of like figuring out how stuff's actually going to get done, you know?
Right.
Like, it's every band is different, and there are definitely scenarios where like there's one or two guys where it's like, in order to accomplish what we're trying to do, I have to get on a page with this guy no matter what that is, you know. Is it how he, is it an ego thing? Is it like is he the main songwriter, and is he the guy who should be like kind of trying to sell the idea on the most, or is he like the guy who doesn't want to change things, or like the guy who's really good, or the guy who really sucks? Like whatever it is, it's like you kind of have to like assess the landscape and be like, all right, if I want to get done what I want to get done, like here are the things that has to happen. Like this dude needs to take a seat. This guy's got to be in a page with me. He's the all-star of the band. Like I need more stuff out of him. Like you kind of have to figure out those personalities and then in a not destructive way, put it all together. You know, it's like there's a level of like psychological Olympics to all of it for sure, you know, especially if you're steering the ship. Bands are psychopaths. Like it can be really hard, you know. But then there's like the great bands where it's like everyone's just on a page all the time or open to whatever, and it works really good and there's no issues, you know. So it's always going to be a different approach. And with like every band I work with, there's a different arrangement of how these things have to play out, you know. But I think learning, just being confident in what you bring to the table helps so much of that go away. You know, like, I think I've learned over time, like, you know, they're coming to me for a reason. I could see a clear path to like what I think we should do here. I'm just going to like stick to that, and I'll pick my battles and fight the stuff I need to, but I'll like always keep the vision in mind, even sometimes more so than the band that's in the studio, you know? And like, that's, I think, helped us gotten through stuff whenever things do get complicated when it comes to making records.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, like most of these projects that are hitting your plate probably have like a set budget or a certain amount of hours that are set allotted for that. So if half a day is spent just bickering and arguing about like how a song should be or the tuning or like any of these things, like that doesn't do anything for anyone. Like it becomes, and I think it also, you know, sours the week or the days ahead, where, you know, as you know, not like you have to babysit these dudes who are recording with you, but it is something where you might have to like, okay, I need to ease up, or we need to break here and just have like, you know, clearer heads prevail. So I think that's an undervalued thing when it comes to people who mix, record, and produce bands, is like you have to not necessarily be a mediator, but like you are the one, like there are bands who think that they're steering the ship, but it's like that kind of driving instructor, like they actually have like a brake on the pedal as well. So yeah, I think it's crazy, the workload and the stress, but you know, it sounds like you've gotten into the rhythm of being able to know when to push and when to pull back in some of those cases.
Yeah, it's not that bad. You make it sound it's honestly not that bad. Like maybe it sucked more 10 years ago, but all the guys I work with and all the bands, like it's easy now. We're all on a
Right.
page. Like, I think part of like the fact that I have so many bands that are back for more than one record too, like now you just understand how things work, what the
Sure.
process is, what the personalities are like. But I don't have any problems anymore.
Yeah.
Like it's honestly, you painted a very bleak picture of studio
which I'm not trying
stress,
to.
of like studio stress and stuff. And I'm not going to pretend that it's that hard. It's honestly super easy now. Like, so I think you just have to be straight with the people you're working with,
Yeah.
and it's much easier to just get that all out of the way, even before you decide you want to work with a band. I've had phone calls with bands that I love. And when I hang up the phone, I'm like, I can't do this record. It sucks because I wish I could, but I know it will be a nightmare. I know we'll hate each other. This isn't the thing that's going to work. And even if the record's going to be cool, it's just going to be such a, like, dealing with that person and what they want isn't going to align with like how I want to do things. And it's like, so yeah, that's just not going to work. Like I said, like some bands don't want to be produced, and that's totally cool. But it's like, well, that's what I do. So like, if you're here, we're doing it, and if not, it's awesome. I will enjoy it from a distance,
Yeah. I'm not trying to be all doom and gloom with some of those things, but I do think that like it's worth mentioning off of the people that maybe are wanting to do that and maybe aren't doing the things like jumping on a phone call with these people and having a long conversation about their vision and seeing if that aligns with yourself, and finding themselves jumping into bed with a band that like is just giving them more stress than joy of like creating the music. So but I do think that comes over time with like understanding your process and knowing how to do things. And like you said, like people coming back to you for certain things. It's like, oh, like now we're just all friends making music together. And there's an understanding between the 4, 5, 6 of us.
Yeah. I mean, you want to set yourself up for your projects to work,
Yes.
So like getting this all out of the way first, doing the homework on, is this going to be cool to make? Like anything, going to see the band live. That was a mistake I made a long time ago. I booked the record because I heard a record and I was like, oh, sounds cool. This band sounds good. And then we signed up to do it. And like 2 days before the record was going to start, they had shows on the way in or something. So I saw the band and then I was like, oh, I made a mistake. Like I should have done that. This band is not very good. I should have done, I won't mention the band, but I was like, I was immediately like, oh my God, what am I in for? I didn't know. Like I was tricked by a production. Like I should have saw this first. So now like I'm always going to creep, even if it's like YouTube videos or whatever. It's like, okay, I need to make sure this is a good band. Step one, but yeah, I mean, you just learn how to get ready. You just learn what you need to prepare for and what you got to get ironed out before you work with people, and if I'm on the fence about something, I figure out if it's going to work or not before I ever say like, yeah, let's do it. Let's spend a month together. This is going to be great. So yeah, it all goes back to like, you can't teach how to do this. It's just all this stuff that, it just comes from learning over time. Like, okay, this is how you approach making records in a way that works,
Yeah, something I'm understanding more and more, especially this year, is like the importance of setting up process first versus just like, I think that there is value in like jumping into like the mix of it and figuring things out, but I think the higher the stakes get, the bit like having your process like just firing on all cylinders and having so mapped out is like so necessary.
Yeah, you're the only guy who told me. I know, but you're the only guy who told me to wear headphones because you didn't want bleed in the speakers. So I was like, he's got like a list of things he wants to go right, and I was like, see, that's like working towards like having a smooth workflow. It's like, okay, that's nice. Like obviously, I know I gotta wear them, but I'm sure a lot of people on interviews don't, and then 10 minutes is wasted. So it's like, yeah, I saw that. I was like, okay, he's preparing for things in the right way. Yeah.
I take that as a very high compliment from you, friend. So talking about your studio and some of those things, maybe we can use this as like a timely example of As far as the time we're recording this, the main studio in Belleville that you recorded so many projects at, kind of, and you can correct the record if it was closed down or kind of moved studios, but I think it was just something that I got to see from the outside, like seeing it through bands recording videos or studio videos, but it was so like felt by so many musicians that got to spend time there. When that era kind of ended. I'm just curious on, like, for anyone who's not aware, if you could tell a little bit about the story of that space and what's in the future for you.
Yeah, I mean, that's just been our home base for so long now. I moved there with Machine, like, I don't know, would be like 12 or 13 years ago. And
Mm.
then like shortly after that, Machine wound up deciding he wanted to move to Texas. So he had his own studio. So we took over that place, like renovated it. And then the guys who I was working with, like who were interns or assistants all over the years, have like worked their way up to being their own engineers and record producers and stuff. So we all just stayed in there and everybody just made a bunch of records,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, I think like it's basically my whole career, and like Randy's whole career and Matt's whole career and Steve who works with me. So like we've we've done so much there over the years. Like there's aside from a handful of bands that I've traveled to produce, like everything we've done's been in that studio,
Mm.
And then 2 years ago, I needed to I started to build out my own space because like now Randy and Matt are becoming their own full-time guys, and it was getting crowded, and I wanted to have a space that was like home base for me, just to
Right.
kind of separate it and stuff. So I was able to just have a band at a time around and things like that. So we built out a new studio, and I was still using the drum room there. Like it was all our shared drum room because it's a really cool drum room. But this fall we had a flood that was really bad when the hurricane hit, and half the studio got completely wiped out. Like it's a 2-floor complex, and the whole first floor is gone. It's underwater. The whole thing's gutted. We would never put a piece of gear back in there. We took a hit on all the stuff that was already in there, and we had problems with leaks and things like that in the past, but this was like no coming back. So we're like, all right, we're out. We got to find another place, So we're as of January, we're starting the process of building like Belleville round 2.
Gotcha.
It's gonna be the same scenario. It's a new studio. Matt and Randy are gonna work out of there, and that'll be our shared drum room. We're in the middle of construction on it right now, but it's awesome. It's like a huge. I mean, thing about Belleville is the drum room sounded good, and it was like a big space, but it was like Belleville's a toilet bowl, and it's like a dirty warehouse in a dirty city, and it was like it's not nice. It just has the sentimental value. Like I don't think anyone who's left the studio has been like, "Wow, this place is beautiful."
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it had a vibe for sure, and like I think the records that got made there and like all the hangs and everything made it more of this like adored location. But like,
yeah.
Once I had bands at my new spot, they're like, all right, I'm good on the Belleville nostalgia now. This is a little more comfortable. So we're like, we're trying to we've got nicer spots for bands now. We're like, it's getting kind of rough and it's just a dirty area. I'm tired of seeing mice run through warehouses. We're like, let's just, we got this nice new log cabin. It's just gonna be nice. It's just gonna be nice. That's the new vibe. So
yeah,
I'm sure.
Yeah. It's so funny that you're like, I think about Knocked Loose's A Different Shade of Blue in the title, like not the title track, the first track on that record is Belleville. So it's like, a little homage to where that record was recorded. And you're like, it's actually not that great. Please don't come here. It's not something to add on your tourist destination. You'll find just mice and rats and just,
I mean,
the lowest scum of
it's what happened there with everybody that made it special, not not the actual location,
Yes.
So like we've been great doing things elsewhere and it feels just as good. It's just a little more comfortable now, so we were never like, oh, what are we gonna do if Belleville goes away? We're like, thank God Belleville's going. Like now we can, it's sad for a minute, but now I'm like, oh well, it's nice here now. So like, and like we're a little more isolated now, which I think is going to help focus people on records and stuff too. And it will just be a easier record experience. Like when you're comfortable and you could sleep and it's not dirty. And there's just so many things like that. Just you don't think about until it's removed and you're in a better scenario, So I think bands are going to have really good experiences. So, coming this year, we should be ready to rock in the spring. It looks like right now. So
great.
That's
awesome. So what's the studio that you're currently in right now?
This is like my home base I'm in Kinnelon, New Jersey, where I do pretty much everything except track drums and stuff. It's like a home studio complex thing where half this place is where I live and half is where I work.
Got you. Yeah. My I this wasn't originally on my question list, but it just came to me, with the discussion of building a new studio. What's a must when it comes to this new studio that you're building out right now that isn't a piece of musical equipment or gear?
The room is like number one. I think we looked at several places when we went to look for the Belleville Studio and picked the one in the worst shape because the drum room sounded the best. It didn't even have a toilet when we moved in. We're like, yeah, but the snare sounds good, so we'll figure it out. Like it was, you can't. There's no piece of gear that really can achieve a good sounding room. Like it starts there, especially when you're recording drums and stuff. So we were like, that has to exist. That's one,
yes,
before anything else. So it eliminated so many other places and stuff. And then, there's those little conveniences and details of it. But that was really the core thing we were looking for. We wanted to walk into a room and be like, oh, okay, it's going to be good in here.
No. Yeah. And that is really interesting. I guess I was more curious on like, is it having a comfy couch? Is it having a lot of lamps? Is it about having a big enough fridge for all the bands? I'm kind of curious on like more of just like making sure that the flow is nice versus like we have a really good sounding drum room or we have enough amps or we have these things. Does your mind go anywhere there?
I try to be hospitable for sure. But it's not in my thoughts when we're looking at studio properties. We need the thing that sounds good first, and then we'll figure out the rest.
Right. Yeah. But do you have any like, I definitely need this as far as like not even for the bands themselves to be hospitable, but just for myself, like,
what do I need?
What does Will need?
What do I need? I need seltzers. I drink a lot, all day. Stay hydrated if you're listening.
Yes.
But I have a mini fridge that's full of seltzers. So there's that's my thing that I need. Yes. You're a beverage guy, so you understand. You literally have a room of liquid death. So dude, I think you understand.
Check it out. It's a lot.
What is happening? That's so much more liquid death than I thought. Oh my God.
And the closet here is filled. And like I've talked about it on other podcasts, but to be very, very quick, I big Bev person but Sticks, who's their VP of lifestyle marketing, had him on the show very early on season 2, and he will just hit me up randomly like, hey, I have a skid. I have a skid problem, and I need to get rid of as many skids of liquid death as I can because we can't sell it for whatever reason. I'm like, send it my way because it's just going to go here and then eventually get guzzled. So, but I do. That was maybe the secret answer that I was trying to push you on, is like a mini fridge just stocked full at all times. I don't have a mini fridge yet, and I don't think a mini fridge would, be enough for all of the liquid death behind me, unfortunately.
You need more than a mini fridge, my friend. That is a lot of drinking behind you.
I think one end goal that I have with this podcast, if we have like a podcast studio at one point, is to have like the glass door fridges that you would see at like an M&M Meats or something, and just have it stocked, like one fridge per Bev sponsor. That's the goal.
I like that. That is pretty good.
Yeah. If there's now we're getting back to Bev talk, but if it is Spindrift the studio dream sponsor, or is there another like beverage of some kind that you would like, if I could rub a genie bottle and wish something, this would be it?
The well-loved drink for the studio is Polar. That would have to be.
Okay.
that would have to be everybody's. If I had to pick one for the boys and the team and all the bands that come in, it would definitely have to be Polar. Okay. Because Polar is a hit here, and I mean, we've tried. I don't know how many more cans I have to stack on gear and tag them in, but we definitely will provide content in exchange for Polar.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of these beverage companies get it twisted that we want like financial compensation.
No, I just want to drink.
We just
yeah. I've done Polar drinking competitions in the middle of records.
Really?
Yes.
Okay, tell me more about that.
Straight from I don't know why I do this with Straight from the Path, but every record there's like a physical or mental challenge that has to happen where we have to like put ourselves through trauma or hurt ourselves like morons. But it's fun. That's why it happens, because it's funny. Yes. Last time I said we're gonna drink 100 Polars today, and we turn it into a drinking competition where we see who can drink the most Polars while we work, and I won because I have the mental fortitude to beat everyone in Straight from the Path. But Tom was close. Shout out to Tom. But I drank 20 cans of Polar in a day, and Tom was on like 18 or 19, and the day was over, and we actually had to wait. We were done working, and I was like, all right, you said you would drink as much as me, and I had to sit there and suffer through his last Polar, and then we could go home. I wouldn't take him home until he drank his 20th Polar. So it was but yeah, I mean, I got the pictures. Let me get some cases. Damn it.
I know. And that's a big thing for me. Like I'm trying to get my own beverage things in the mix. But I will work my absolute hardest to clip this and just, DM it to Polar and be like, hey, we got some diehard fans.
Every time I'm going to Palladium, I drive by that big bear and I salute him. I don't know what else I could do. The band tags them, the studio tags them. We're here to help. I want to spread the message, man.
Yeah. And all it takes is one thing. So, being the squeaky wheel and hopefully getting the Polar grease is the hope for you. Do you have any studio no-nos?
Studio no-nos. That's good. No, I don't have a lot of rules. I mean, you have to be able to just do your job. So like whatever happens once the day's done, I don't care if you're ready to go when we start the next morning or afternoon, Obviously there's like the don't touch the buttons like a 2-year-old rule. Like, please don't play with the shiny light thing. If you don't know what it is, don't touch it,
Yeah.
No, it's just like generally like just don't be terrible,
Yeah.
And recycle. I think those are the 2 rules, Yeah,
I like that you add recycling in there after the Polar comments.
Well, all right. So Belleville doesn't recycle. Back to how much of like a garbage town it is. Yeah. So everything just goes in the dumpster. So it's like a lifetime of bands who have come here who just think like everything goes in a garbage. So getting bands to recycle has actually been a challenge. Like I have the bins with the 2 different divided sides now.
Right.
A lot of cans, so it's like, actually recycling has been a challenge to get bands on a page. Like, hey man,
that is literally the last thing I would expect to come up on this podcast.
Yeah, all the dumb shit that bands do, and they like you would think like would be a problem. And it's actually that they don't know how to recycle properly.
So be good at your instrument and recycle are 2 musts.
Sure, showering would be up there, please.
Yes.
That's it, and just be prepared.
Do you have studio shampoo?
No, I don't have studio shampoo. Okay. Should I have studio shampoo? Is that a thing?
I don't know. I like the alliteration there, so that's why I asked.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't know if you would just pick your own shampoo or if it's like you're getting like the fruity like child scented stuff that you could just toss in there if someone's not bringing their own.
The band shower is just a culmination of all the shampoo bottles that are left from the previous band.
Oh, I see.
That someone will then work through. Oh, I'm out. I got to buy a new bottle. Then that bottle will stay. So generally, you're using the last band's shampoo and conditioner and body wash because
I got you.
Those are the items you don't fly with and stuff. So
yeah,
and they pile up. Sometimes I have to.
Maybe you should just like make a collective like concoction of all the body washes and shampoos in one.
The two most common things that pile up at the studio, one being peanut butter jars, for sure.
Whoa.
Because every band buys every guy in every band gets a jar of peanut butter, and not everybody always finishes the peanut butter. So it's like the thing that sits around. We'll have a dozen peanut butter jars in a cabinet, and the Old Spice, the big Old Spice body wash. Those are the two things that like I'll have so many of all the time. I probably have 5 of each right now in here.
That's wild. So if there's 3 sponsorships, it should be Polar, Kraft peanut butter, and Old Spice body wash, just so the bands don't need to bring anything and you can have a proper amount stocked.
That would be pretty good. Yeah.
So that's my goal after this podcast, is to send it to those 3 companies and hook something up for you.
Thank you.
Anything to make it happen. So let's transition. We've talked a lot about the studio and talking about some of the bands. Obviously Fit for an Autopsy put out an album just like a couple weeks ago, and N has some things on the horizon. I see you guys are taking out our Calgary friends in Wake, which I'm very excited about.
Awesome.
So yeah, I've gotten to work really closely with that band, and the latest record just before the Metal Blade stuff. But yeah, just talk to me about like what went into, we'll do it part 1 and part 2. Talk to me about that new Fit for an Autopsy record, and then we'll talk about the End tour, because I think the End tour, I was originally going to see you guys before the pandemic hit, when you were going to be coming through with, I can't even remember what the lineup was. I think Chamber.
It was Misery Signals.
Misery Signals.
Pandemic.
Yeah. So yeah, we'll get to that, but let's first talk about the new Autopsy record.
Yeah. What do you want to know? You got a question or?
What do you think is musically the next step in that? Because I was listening to a lot of podcasts about how when you're a producer and you also play in bands, and there's that kind of like that thing where you're trying to put, I think there's just like, it's just a different way of looking at it versus like you can be a little bit more riskier with bands that you're working with because you want to try to make their records better. Obviously you're trying to make your record really, really good, but talk to me about like releasing that at the top of the year and maybe just the response for it so far.
Yeah. I mean, people seem to like it, which is awesome. I literally just do what I want with the band. Like we just write the music that we want. I don't care if I honestly don't care if people like it. I'm glad that they do. Like, I'm sure the other guys are glad that they do, because it sustains a career, being able to play cool shows and tour and stuff. But I could definitely just produce records all year. Yeah. And be totally fine. I'm still making music all year. I write the stuff with Faye because it's like the stuff I'm into and just things I want to hear, and it's fun. It's like I do it because it's fun, and the stylistic twists and turns that the band has taken over the years has been just the evolution of stuff I like, so it's been cool to like, it's just a fun like release of my own creative stuff where I'm not trying to suit some other band's purpose or anything like that. I think it keeps me fresh. It helps me keep fresh on guitar because it's hard for me to do, so yeah. And with this one, like we had downtime in the pandemic, like I'm sure every band in the world did, and I just got to spend more time on it. It was great. Like, it's honestly like relaxed. It's all of our favorite record, at the moment. Like, I know that sounds cliche, but we're all just super excited about the record, and response has been awesome. So really kind of just all worked out this time. It was pretty cool.
Yeah. So moving over to End, I think I had Brendan on the podcast like very early on, and we were able to talk about the start of that band, and I thought it was just cool to see so many people from different lanes all coming together for that. So, from your perspective, like, Fit for an Autopsy is already, going at this point. So like, you clearly have your hands in so many honeypots right now. So like, adding another band to the mix for you at the time, did that feel daunting, or are you like, looking back, are you like at capacity when it comes to all the musical
No,
projects and stuff that you're doing?
I mean, End is even like a further extension of what I was saying about how I, with Fit, we just like we do what we want, we do it because it's fun,
Right.
With End, like the stylistically, End is probably my favorite version of extreme music. Like what you hear on those records is kind of like the stuff I'm probably into the most. Like if I'm gonna put like crazy music on, I'm gonna listen to something that's like resembles End, and like initially when Fit started, those were like ideas that could have probably worked themselves into the band. But the way the band's like evolved and what it sounds like now over time, anytime I would try to write stuff like that, any of the power violence like influence or some of the grindier stuff, the more chaotic stuff, it just like felt out of place with the other things I was trying to do. So like I couldn't get both out of my system doing Fit, and then I realized like if this was its own thing and streamlined and I wasn't trying to like throw the kitchen sink at one band, like it would probably help me focus both bands. And in a way I think it made Fit better because I could lean into certain things a little more where I'm like, oh, I don't have to worry about this like this stuff. And then it gave me the freedom to just be like, all right, now we can go nuts with End,
Right.
And like when starting the band was just like, it was easy because over the years making records, I had crossed paths with guys in other bands that I knew loved that style of music, but just like didn't have a way, weren't doing it either, Greg from Misery Signals and Jay, who's from Shiloh and Reign Supreme and Blacklisted and Brendan. And it was like, hey, you guys all like this stuff. You're not doing this with your bands. Like if I started a project and these were the guys, like, would you want to do it? And everyone was like, yeah, this would be awesome. So it was like, it was just born out of like, we all like the stuff and we're not doing it. So do you want to do it? It's like that easy to put together. Plus it's like everybody in the band's like pretty good at what they do. I know them. They're not like dumbasses. Maybe Brendan, I don't know, just see where that lands. But you know what I mean? They're not like, they're all capable. They understand the genre. Like it seems set up like this is going to work before we even wrote music. And then like the first stuff we did, I was like, yes, it's exactly what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
So it just came together for fun, and now like we're able to tour a little bit here and there because, we didn't know, like literally didn't know what it was going to be. It was like, we'll make a few songs, put it out. The response to it was like it went a lot wider than I thought it was going to go, and it made everybody look at the band like, oh, let's like maybe do more with it. Like, let's take it seriously and try, for lack of a better word,
Yeah.
That EP we wrote in days. So it was like, now then going into the full length, and we wanted to like, take the band a little more seriously. Now we want to make it good. It's not just like a thing where like, we're just getting it out of our system. Now I'm like, cool. Now I'm like fired up for it. And there's stuff in the pipeline for the band that I'm really excited about. And I'm just excited to go play shows with it. It's been a long time since I've been able to do like a full tour. And I think we're all looking at it as like, this is just going to be a really cool vacation / fun run for us,
Yeah. It was funny when the EP originally came out. I think the first track that you guys put out was Usurper. Is that right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. And at the time I was playing in a band called Usurper, and it sounded nothing alike. It was way more in the thrash kind of like that kind of space, but it was just like, I think that's originally what caught my attention. Like, I'd listened and grown up listening to Counterparts a lot, but then I was like, oh, this is my band's name. And then I just listened to the music. I was like blown away. And so to see, the LP and more opportunities come for the band is really, really exciting. Because I think when the EP dropped, I was like, I don't know if I'll ever get to see this band because, with members all more so on the East part of, North America, I was like, when am I going to be over there? And then when the Misery Signals end run got canceled, I was like, well, that was it. But, it clearly seems like there's more fuel in the end gas tank to be able to do more and get out in front of more people. And going back to an earlier piece that you were mentioning on how having having another band actually allowed you to go deeper into both extremes versus trying to play in multiple lanes with just fit.
Yeah, it definitely was. It was very freeing for both projects. Like it did really let me go. Like I was on the fence about a lot of the stuff I was doing with Fit combined with the more chaotic style of stuff, and I was like, I don't feel like these songs can be as good as they are because I keep trying to force other elements in that don't feel as like cohesive, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And being able to have that separation um has really strengthened, I think, my ability to like lean into those moods a little more on the Fit records in the right way.
Yeah.
And I honestly think once N started, that Fit got better, you know, even though like, oh, there's a lot of brain power to writing a bunch of music for another band and stuff. It fully opened up like a lane where I was like, cool, we can do this now. This is like this is the sound. This is the thing that works. And
that fits.
Yeah.
Pun intended.
Yeah, pun intended, you know, and yeah, it is a cool thing. It's hard to like vocalize, I guess, but it's definitely I don't feel like I have to do everything at once all the time anymore when I go right.
No, and I think that's really cool to be able to like you said, on paper it's like, oh, you're playing in a new band that takes away time from other things, but I think being able to like step away from different things and do other creative ventures, that, you know, like high tides raises all the ships. You know,
yeah,
it doesn't even matter if the band sound the same or the interests are the same.
Yeah, and I think it's cool because it also like crosses the streams where like people will find End from Fit, people will find counterparts from End. The like all of our bands probably stand to benefit somewhat from the fact that we're like sort of bridging genres with other projects and things, and I think that's a fun part of it because for sure there are people who are fans of Fit or more traditional metal guys who like maybe we're like that gateway band into some of the more power violence and extreme stuff, you know, and then or from the counterparts fan, I'm sure it's opened up some doors for people like that too. So like I kind of like that because it's like there's just such a wealth of awesome shit in that world and it has been for decades now that it's like sometimes you just need one band to be like, oh, it sounds like this band. Somebody else tells them about it, and then he's like, cool, now I know what Rotten Sound is, and I know, you know, it's like, and it's like that's like a part of like I always love finding those gateway bands and then just finding a world of other stuff. Like it still happens. It's rarer nowadays, but when it does, I'm like, it's really cool, you know. So if we could be that band for people, I think it's awesome.
Yeah, and going back to that like Hatebreed like thank you list that you were mentioning on like, oh, who's this band? You go listen to it. Like I feel like there's versions of that in just different ways to be able to connect the giant spider web that is heavy music. And that could be if you're a metalhead, if you're a hardcore kid, if you're a punk rocker, whatever it is. But I think being able to make those new connections does a lot for the overall community. You know, behind you is a many guitar amps. Like an overwhelming amount. But when it comes to that, you know, do you have one that if, you know, if the, you know, another flood was happening and I don't wish that on your home studio, but if there's one that you had to save and walk out the door with, is there one that comes to mind?
Yeah, I mean, it's the 5150. Like it's the amp. You know, it's on basically every metal record or hardcore record ever. You know, there's always different flavors of stuff that is good for a particular aesthetic or whatever, but it's just such a classic amp. It never doesn't work, you know? So I mean, that's sort of the one, I guess, that I would save from the flood that I really hope doesn't happen here.
Yeah. Do you have a, you know, out of everything that's behind you, do you think that there's one that's maybe the silver bullet or like the most underrated when it comes to like being able to do some of those like little detail things?
Yeah, there's probably some secret weapons, but I don't know if I want to.
No, that's fine.
All that.
No, yeah, like you can see it, but you know, once I press this button, it's game over.
It's always subjective. Like I have more stuff than I wish I had to have because there are little tricks and things and benefits to different pieces of gear where you know, I've learned over time, like sometimes You might only use that like once every couple of months, but it's exactly what you want when you want it, you know? So like I've definitely, unfortunately have had to acquire a bunch of expensive crap, to try to make better records for people, you know? So it's, yeah, I wish I could just sell it all and retire. No, I'm just kidding. I like the pursuit of like trying to find new tones and stuff. And it sucks, but it just requires like getting a bunch of stuff and seeing what's good for what. And, you know, that gear pursuit, I think, is like the part of, it's the part of recording that hurts the wallet, but it's very fun, you know?
I got you. Do you know about Rev amplification or Rev amps?
Yeah, I think is he out of the shot? He's right over there in the corner.
Oh, just beneath the VHT, I think?
There. Yeah, I've got a 120.
Got you.
I grabbed it last year, I think, but it is a cool head. The new comeback kit, we used it, that I mixed.
Yes.
I reamped some guitars with that. So that's Canada. Look at that.
Yeah. So it's a selfish question because Derek and Dan, who run Rev, like I owned a Generator 100 like I think when they first introduced it, and like I kind of got to see the early beginnings of like the 120 and like, you know, version 1 and you know, when they started to make the different things. And it's been so cool to see some like literally a company in the middle of rinky-dink Manitoba, Canada, to be able to blossom and just become this behemoth in the heavy music space is like super cool.
It's a really cool amp. It's very unique compared to a lot of the other stuff. I think they figured out something that just wasn't the typical flavor for a heavy guitar tone. So, yeah, like I said, it's that perfect case where it's like, yeah, that's not always the thing I'll want, but like if I need that different style of tone and stuff, it's like there it is, you know? So yeah, they did pull off a pretty cool amp.
Yeah. So I always got to plug them. I've been trying to get both of them on the show to talk about some of these things, because Dan, like this goes way back in time, but Dan, I remember I got a message through him through Kijiji, which is essentially like the Canadian version of Craigslist, and he was like, I can't even remember how this happened, but he was like essentially wanting people within the local like metal space to like try out his amp, and he found out about my band through some means. And I was like, I don't know if this is just a random like creepy dude on the, you know, on the ad list who was just doing this. And then he ended up being like, oh, I feel stupid now for like not giving you a shot on your amp. But you know, I think it's cool to see what they built, and you know, little things like even just seeing it on your amp wall is that makes me happy as a Canadian heavy music head.
Yeah.
So Will, a couple other questions before we start to wrap up the show. This is a big question, and I think anyone listener, you know, is dying to know. So I hope you're ready to answer it. Do you think Kenny is ever going to go on a date with that bubble tea girl, or no?
Wow, how did this make it onto this? Wow. Is this like audience questions? How do you know this?
I have my sources.
That's insane. All right, well, this is either Brendan or Kyle submitting this. So I don't know if he's ever going to gain the strength to do it. We've given him plenty of guidance and insight on how he could best approach it. I don't think he's ever going to do it. I think he just might be too much of a coward. He's a great guy, but he might just be a little shy.
Is there any other context that you want to give for people that have no idea what I'm not even sure what I'm even asking. So
I don't know if I should give any more context.
Okay,
because that's fair. I don't want to blow up his spot. In the event that he actually does grow the courage, I don't want to ruin it just in case.
Right.
Kenny, you should ask out the bubble tea girl.
Yeah, I think so. Without any context, I also think that he should ask.
Absolutely, you should.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, I'm very curious on who Bubble Tea Girl is, and you know what flavor of bubble tea that she prescribes to.
Well, when Kenny asks her out and she says yes, and we get that awesome Instagram picture,
we'll do a follow-up.
Yep.
Amazing. Yeah, that's the little Nardward more so question that I wanted to throw at you. Yeah, Jordan just said Spencer's the hardwired of the hardcore scene. But Will, this has been a really great chat. The very last official question they'll ask you is a favorite mosh related story that you would like to share on the show. And that could be anything that's first to your mind. That could be something that happened that at a show that you were playing, attending, whatever is like the first thing to your head is how we start to wrap up.
Okay. I'm cycling through all the mosh related stories that I could tell because there's a few that I probably should ignore.
Yep.
Favorite mosh related story. All right. This is crazy.
Yes.
It is mosh related. It's also fire related. I don't want to tell any fight stories because it's too much. It's a bad way to end the show.
You got me with fire, so
all right.
You know.
There's a place called the Rec Room. It's in New Jersey. It's a big warehouse where they used to do shows. And I hear a lot of dogs. What's happening?
Yeah, sorry. Those are my dogs who are barking, so ignore that. That'll be edited out or kept in, depending on.
Gotcha. Okay, so, all right, I'll start the story. So, It's this place called the Rec Room. It's in New Jersey. It is I believe it's a Candiria, Dillinger, Escape Plan, ISIS, Glassjaw show, I want to say. This was a long time ago.
Yeah.
It was awesome.
Here lineup.
Dillinger's playing. There's like a rush to the front of the stage. Dillinger used to have a guy on stage who would blow fire out.
Oh,
he was like, he would do the spit the fireball thing. There was this giant AC duct on top of the front of the stage. And the kid goes crowd surfing. He gets up to the front, and the guy goes and blows the fire thing. At the same time, the AC must have kicked on. So there's this cold air jet stream that goes down, and pushes the fire straight into the kid. And the kid who's on top of the crowd lights on fire. So he's just engulfed in flames. And Dillinger doesn't even stop playing, which is sick because if stuff happens at the show and you just keep playing, it's sick. So they don't even stop. And the guy who blows the fire jumps off the stage to put the kid out. And I'm like, I just watched the kid get lit on fire. Like, that's worse than like, this dude punched me. Like, the guy is on fire. So I'm like, what happens next? And then, so they pat him down. He goes under the crowd. You don't see it. Like 30 seconds later, the kid's up on stage and he's like having the time of his life. Like he was excited to be lit on fire. And I'm like, I like a lot of bands a lot, but I don't like any band in the world where I'm like excited if they light me on fire. That's not fun to me. So I was like,
I draw the line there.
Yeah. I was like, that is a fan because there's no scenario where I'm like pumped after that.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
And that didn't shut the show down. The cops shut the show down because a car window got broken in a parking lot. And then SWAT, like helicopters show up. Everything was this crazy chaotic
over a broke window versus a kid who was literally engulfed in flames.
Like, if you guys were in here like an hour ago, you would have been way more angry. But that's always a fun one because it's more lighthearted. No one wants to hear about violence or pit beef or whatever. But
I am all about hearing stories of people becoming the Human Torch in the middle of a show and just like taking it on the chin and being so down for it.
When you see someone get lit on fire, you're not prepared for it. It's not like a fight. It's not like, oh, that dude just got punched. Like, lighting someone on fire is crazy. Only Dillinger could do that and just keep playing. God.
Yeah, man, that is wild. So, if the Human Torch himself is listening, shout out to you. Shout out to anyone who has.
I would love to track him down because I have so many questions.
I have many questions myself. So
this was New Jersey. I want to say it was like 2001. It probably would have been. You were in Livingston, New Jersey. This is like Craigslist missed connections.
Yes.
Saw you get lit on fire. 2001. Would love to connect.
Yeah, so there's a couple things where we got to do a follow up on the guy who got lit on fire, and we have to do a follow up on Kenny and the bubble tea girl.
Yeah.
But Will, this has been a super super great chat. Really appreciate all your time, all your band links and your links and all all the info about who you are and what you're involved in will be in the, the YouTube description, the show notes.
Sweet.
But if there's any shout outs, people that you want to plug, or anything that you want to send the people off with, the floor is yours.
Send people off with? What are we doing? All right. Fit for an Autopsy has a record just came out. What the Future Holds on Nuclear Blast. Band's on tour in the US right now through February, and then Europe in May and June. And as soon as everything else opens back up, there's a ton of touring in the works for them, and has a full US tour in March, kind of a half US. I don't know, not a ton of shows, select dates, we'll say, but yes. We're doing what we can. Leave me alone. I'm trying. Don't message me asking me to come play your state. We're trying. We're busy. I will try to get everywhere. And then in May, we're doing some shows in Europe. Again, please leave me alone. I understand that we didn't go to your country. I promise we will try to do it when we have more time. So plenty of touring coming up for both bands. Some new music, hopefully in the future for N2. We'll see what I can talk about when I can talk about it. But yeah, thank you to everyone who just supports the bands or is interested in jamming us or checking it out in any way. Always much appreciated.
Of course, yeah, and I really appreciate you, Will, to be able to come on here and chat with me, and I hope that we get to cross paths in the future and drink a couple Spindrifts ourselves.
I love it. If we come up, if we make it up to Canada in March, I will bring some in the van so you can experience it.
I will trade you with a lot of this Liquid Death that I'll probably still have.
I bet you will. Yeah, yes. That's awesome.
Yeah.